I want to start with some important information for those who had furnaces in flood. With cold weather right around the corner, I asked my team to find a way to help those who haven't repaired or replaced their heating systems. Anecdotally, I've heard that some are struggling to get them fixed for a variety of reasons, including supply chain issues and finding work. So we want to help know who and where they are. So we've been working to get the data from FEMA, so we know who reported these damages, and we received that information this past week. As a result, we'll be sending out a survey to over 1,000 individuals to get more information. So, if you reported damage to your heating system and you receive a survey from a Vermont.gov email address, please help us by responding. But please make sure you check the email address, and it is a Vermont.gov email. That's Vermont spelled out and .gov. And if you didn't report damage to your heating system, you shouldn't be responding to a survey or getting a survey. So be aware if you do. And it's just about the scams that might come along with that once you announce something like this. We'll have more on this next week, and Chief Officer Farnham will address some other questions about repairs in the FEMA process in a few minutes. But first, we have an update on our Business Assistance Program, BGAP, to get more funding to businesses, landlords who were summer's flood. We'll also hear from a couple of business owners, Jen Roberts from Onion River Outdoors and Erica Hayes from Cambridge Village Market, about their recovery efforts. As a reminder about the BGAP program, shortly after the flooding, we announced this $20 million program provided up to $20 to help employers. The goal was to help businesses reopen as fast as possible. And thanks to the good work of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and the Agency of Digital Services, we were able to create the program from scratch and get the checks out the door in that 30 days. In the first phase, we set a cap of $20,000 because we wanted to help as many employers as possible and to get a sense of the financial need committing the entire $20 million. But now that employers have had several weeks to apply, we know there's over $120 million in unmet needs. So we're going to remove the $20,000 cap so we can close the gap a little bit more. Businesses have reopened. This is important. I've asked to convene tomorrow to move forward with these updates. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Goldstein for more of the details.
The Governor mentioned some tweaks to the BGAP program as we look to get more money out to impacted businesses, nonprofits, and landlords as they continue to recover from the physical damages sustained through the July flooding. Previously, the program issued grants of 20% of net damages, but up to a cap of $20,000. If entities suffered more than $1 million worth of damage, they had an opportunity to go higher than $20,000, but it was based on how many employees they had. Today, we're announcing that we want to raise the grant percentage to 30% of net damage $1,000 cap. Over $1 million we are applied and reported damages of $300,000, they were approved for a grant of $20,000. With this change, that same business will now be eligible to receive a $90,000 grant to recover and reopen. Organizations and landlords who have already applied for BGOP will not have to apply for applications that are still under review, and for those applicants that have already received a check, we will be issuing a supplemental to cover the difference. When this program launched, as the governor said, it was less than a month after the floods, as wide a net as possible, aware of the amount of the need, and we knew that we had limited state funding to address the need. Now that we're seeing these applications coming in and what is reported, we know there's over $100 million of damage, and more than 600 businesses and landlords and farms have applied for the program. We have been continually assessing the need versus the state money, the state funding available throughout this process, and feel that the shift in this program will deliver much more value to the businesses who need it most, working so hard to get back on their feet and their door open, or their apartment bill livable again. We will continue to work as fast as we can to get the money out the door, and hope that this added financial relief will help many of our hardest hit areas of the state to continue to come back online this fall. I now, the governor introduced the members of the business community. I'm going to pass this now over to Erica Hayes from the Cambridge Village Market. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Erica Hayes. I am the daughter of owners of the Cambridge Village Market, Ron and Linda Fry. We purchased the market back on June 15th, just 3 short weeks before the flood. The market was built in the 1850s, and it has been the heart of the village ever since. We knew we had to keep the doors open, and we knew we had to bounce back one way or another, not only as business owners, but for the community as well. What we did not expect was how quickly that was going to happen with the help from our amazing community friends and family, as well as our incredible staff, and the assistance and guidance from the governor's office and the other state programs and state employees that have helped us along the way. The first $20,000 grant was more than helpful, and now knowing that the additional assistance that we will be receiving is going to put us in a much better position to recover and to fulfill our vision for the market and for the community. We've lost so much due to the flood, but only 2 short months later, we are now beyond grateful to say that we will be able to completely recover, and we have gained so much more out of this process. We know our local community relies on us, and we rely on them as well. With that, I will hand it over to Jen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jen Roberts. I'm the owner of Onion River Outdoors in Montpelier. I was training a new staff person at Onion River when the rain started on July 10th. I was not alarmed. Our store's basement forms part of the channel that guides the north branch of the Winooski River through downtown Montpelier. Water in the basement is a fact of life for us. We knew to watch the informal river gauge on the side of the Langdon Street Bridge, where long ago someone painted the letters CB for cellars and basements at the critical water level. We knew where the water would start seeping up from the cracks in the floor when the river hit that CB level. Throughout the afternoon, the forecast worsened, and the tone and volume of warning emails from our Downtown Business Association increased. Still, we were not alarmed. In 2011, we had water above knee height in the basement. We knew what to do. We put out the call for help from our friends, customers, and coworkers, and they showed up to move inventory. An army of volunteers moved through the rooms of the basement, diligently lifting items to the highest shelves. Surely, we thought, the water wouldn't rise above waist height. The last time it did was because of a fluke, an ice jam in the river. The time before that was the Great Flood of 1927, before we had the protection of Wrightsville Dam. We knew we were taking the right steps to protect our business. Later in the evening, we realized we needed to bring the volunteers back to get everything out of the basement. We put out the call a second time, and again our friends and customers and coworkers came back to help move more items up to the main floor. This time they couldn't work for long. The water was rising too quickly, and they became concerned about the safety of being in the basement with so much water pressure against the outside wall. By the time we realized that we needed to move items even higher than the first floor, the river was shin deep in the parking lot and threatening to cut off the routes out of town. We left one last brave soul who was determined to keep pumping out the basement, and we rode our bikes home through the deluge. We have all seen the devastation that followed, as well as the tremendous outpouring of help from our communities. Day after day, people gave time, energy, and money. 2 months on, Montpelier is still drying out and still rebuilding. Only a few shops have been able to reopen so far, and ours has not been one of them. The hurdles have been enormous. Wet buildings, mold, toxic mud, a shortage of skilled labor to rebuild our stores, lack of federal aid for small businesses, and a summer when the rain never seemed to stop. The BGAP funds that our state government provided were, for some businesses, the only aid they would receive. The initial allotment started our path to recovery. Lifting the cap is going to help Onion River and many other businesses reopen and recover sooner than we could have without this help. When I heard about the additional funding, my relief brought tears to my eyes. We have all learned from this summer's flooding that we need to help each other in coordinated ways, thinking ahead, establishing rainy day funds, and preparing emergency response plans. This is why we organize ourselves into a state government, and these are the times we rightly rely on this, our larger community's help, to recover. With this additional BGAP assistance, Onion River and other small businesses will reopen sooner, reemploy our staff and get them off of unemployment sooner, and help our downtowns recover their basic services for the good of our whole community. Thank you. I will now turn it over to Doug Farnham.
Thank you, Jen. So I'd like to start out by talking about one specific type of situation. As the governor referenced, it's related to heating systems. If you received a FEMA Individual Assistance Award for damage to your home, and it involves your heating system or any other short-term repairs that could make it habitable before winter, even if you are considering a buyout in the long term, please go ahead with those repairs. Don't wait. You go ahead with those repairs and keep your receipts. As long as you keep your receipts so that you can demonstrate to the state and FEMA down the road that you use that award for immediate repairs to reoccupy, it will not affect the amount of your buyout. So we are committed to working with FEMA and the municipalities to address the buyouts and the interest that there is currently in those in buyouts. There's over 200 households that have inquired about buyouts. But it will take time to work through that, and it would be disingenuous of me to say that we're going to have the buyout situation resolved before the winter starts. So please, if you received an award to repair your heater, to do things that you would need in order to reoccupy for this winter, move ahead with that. Keep your receipts. And if your expense exceeds what FEMA awarded you, if you're within that 60-day appeal period, please go back to FEMA with that documentation and appeal. There's no harm in appealing. It won't affect your original award, particularly when you have evidence that the costs exceeded what FEMA originally estimated the damage would take to repair. Tied into that, I would say if you applied for individual assistance and you received an award shortly after the flood, some of you may be coming up on the end of your 60-day appeal window. I would encourage you to just take another look at your award, at what it has cost you in the meantime, and make sure you don't miss an opportunity to appeal if you haven't. Obviously, if you're satisfied and you see that the expenses line up with the award you received, that's great. But if you feel like you have evidence that shows you should get a larger award, I can't promise your award will be adjusted, but I do know that FEMA will accept that appeal as long as it's within the 60-day window, and they will look at the facts of your situation. When I say keep your receipts, please keep your receipts. I would recommend for at least 2 or 3 years, because you don't know, as we have community discussions over the next year or two, what may come into scope as far as buyouts or other options. So we wouldn't want you to be harmed down the road because you had an individual assistance award that you used, but you didn't have the receipts to show you used it on the appropriate expenses. So please keep them for several years at a minimum. I would also like to thank FEMA and General Roy for the extension of the individual assistance period. And remember, we are still getting applications for individual assistance. That is going through October 12th. And as a Vermonter that grew up in the Northeast Kingdom, it's difficult for me to ask for help. And I just want to say, please come forward. If you haven't applied for individual assistance, we still open. You can still through October 12th. You have not missed your opportunity to, and that could be related to your home, or it could be related to rental assistance if you're unable to live in your home. I would also say, in the realm of the direct housing program, please, if you do not have your own home right now, if you are unhoused because of the flood, please engage with FEMA and let them know that you need help in that area. If you are moving around between friends and family and your situation is uncertain going into the winter, we want to make sure that FEMA knows that you may need help, and that the only way for them to know that is for you to come forward and engage with them. I recognize that this has been a traumatic event for hundreds of households, if not thousands. But I do think if you come forward and engage, that it's very likely we will be able to give you more help than you have right now, and I think it will be worth it. So, thank you. Now I'll turn it over to General Roy from FEMA.
Thank you, Doug. Governor, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you today. I asked the governor if I could have a couple of minutes to the appeals process. Read from my, we have over 60 people here in Vermont focused on the recovery. And we still have 4 disaster recovery centers open. The governor, in one of our morning meetings the other day, talked about a gentleman he met in a local store who had been impacted by the storm and was getting a second loan for his property. And the governor asked him, have you talked to FEMA about your status? Well, they gave me a denial letter. And that's the challenge, is people will get the letters. We talked about this up front. In fact, we had meetings with the staffers, congressional staffers, to go over the ineligibility letters. That it doesn't mean that you're denied. It just means that you may be in a state where we need more information from you to help you. As a direct result of that, the team that we have here in Vermont have conducted over 7,900 calls to applicants. As a direct result of those calls and checking on the status, as Doug talked about, we've added over $4.4 million in assistance to those individuals because we've updated their status. Vermonters are a true race of people. I think Calvin Coolidge said that will literally beggar themselves in service of others. And in this case, they don't want to take from somebody else. They think that if they ask for help, they're going to take it from somebody, and that's not the case. So I know there's a ton of great work that's going on out there in our disaster recovery centers. And so I asked for just one vignette from our team to showcase what's going on, and using you as an outlet to be able to put the word out, to seek assistance from FEMA. Even if you've gotten assistance, you may be eligible for additional assistance. So I'm going to read it to you right here. A gentleman came to the DRC, Disaster Recovery Center, with his granddaughter to inquire about his case. He felt he wasn't giving the whole story. We felt he wasn't giving the whole story, but he wouldn't disclose any extra information. While he was talking to the mitigation staff, his daughter told us that he was homeless, sleeping in his truck or his shed with no water or electricity, and he had many health issues. She didn't think he would endure the winter weather. Before they left the Disaster Recovery Center, the gentleman said he wasn't looking for a handout and didn't want to accept the food voucher. He believed it was for the less fortunate. He explained that we are here to help. We explained that we're here to help everybody, regardless of loss, income, or social status, and that the government is here to assist you. We went over the information he would need to submit to FEMA to get assistance. After all the documents were submitted, he was awarded housing assistance, other needs assistance, and rental assistance. He actually shed tears when he learned of the funds that he was being awarded. Okay? It's just one small example of what's going on in our disaster recovery centers as people come in and request for assistance. So I implore upon you to help us get the word out. Here we are in the extended window for individual assistance, right, which is supposed to end on September 12th. Right? We are still at about 75% rate of people applying for assistance who are eligible for assistance. So that means that people are out there who are eligible for help that have yet to apply. So we have a couple weeks left, and anything you can do to help us get the word out for people to approach FEMA and get the assistance that that is available for them, we'd be grateful for. So with that, thank you so much. Governor, back to you.
Thank you very much. We'll now open it up to questions.
Governor, what's the importance of expanding the assistance to businesses, especially with the fall season coming up and a lot of businesses getting ready to welcome an influx of visitors?
Well, we have a variety of businesses. Some are attached to tourism. Some are just from day-to-day operations, manufacturing, and so forth. So this, when we first put this into place, as I said before, we had to put a cap on it because we didn't know how far the money would go. We didn't know the extent of the unmet need. And so we put the cap in intentionally. We could get through the first phase. Now that we know that there's that $120 million of unmet need, this $20 million isn't going to satisfy all of that. But lifting the cap, this $20,000 cap, lifting that, and then being able to provide for 30% of their damages will go a long ways towards that. So as we open up for the season, Cambridge Market being one, right on a corridor where we have a lot of visitors from out of state, and they'll be open and ready to go and be able to provide for the traffic that we expect in the height of the season. So again, whether you're a fixed business, manufacturing business, or one that relies on as well as local trade, this is going to be essential, I believe.
How much money is left in the BGAP? Out of that 20 million, how much is left?
I believe it's about 16 million, but go ahead.
Yeah, we've committed about $6 million so far, but we will have, there's some applications in process, so we estimate that there's 10 million more to spend on this enhancement.
What, and maybe Commissioner, maybe for the Governor too, what else do you expect to ask of the E-Board tomorrow? Are you looking for more money in this? Are there any other requests that you're looking for?
Yeah, we aren't asking for anything at this point. We wanted to update them on where we're going with this, make sure that they know, because when we went into on the first E-Board meeting, we asked for the 20 million, and we told them what we were doing. We just wanted to let them know about the second phase and make sure they were all on board with this, which they have assured us they are.
If there's $120 million in unmet need and you have a $20 million program, then does upping the cap functionally mean that there are going to be some businesses that don't get any money because other businesses are getting more money?
We believe everyone will be covered under this lifting the cap, as well as raising it to 30%, other than the higher end, which Commissioner Goldstein had said, talked about in her remarks. But everyone will be covered on this for this next phase.
Yeah,
correct?
the way we came to the percentage was looking at all of the outstanding applications. So we'll preface that by saying if there's a brand new application that comes in, we can't guarantee anything. But we're thinking since this has been out for about a month and a half, We have 600 applications that it will be able to cover everybody.
So does that mean that if there's $120 million in unmet need, and you think that this $20 million is going to suffice for this program, that a lot of those businesses that suffer those losses are just not applying for assistance?
We do expect that there are some businesses that are not applying. That could either mean that they're working on this on their own, but we've also accounted for additional take-up in this regard. Not a whole deluge, but we are estimating that there may be people more interested since there is not a cap. If that answers your question.
Is the state doing anything to kind of make sure that this money isn't gobbled up pretty quickly by a few large actors that, will have the staff to apply to grants and not overlooking, some small businesses that may have barriers to doing that, so like BIPOC-owned businesses, language barriers, et cetera.
Yeah, so of the 600 applications, there's only about 20 that are the over $1 million worth of damage. That doesn't mean that they're the larger business. It just means they have the largest impact of the physical damage. The rest, most of the applicants are in from $0 to $250,000 worth of damage. So, are there businesses that aren't applying? Perhaps, but we continue to promote it in every one of our newsletters, press conferences, that people should go out and apply for this. I think 211 collected information that about 1,000 businesses were impacted, and we have 600 applications. So clearly there are people not applying.
But is the state contemplating any specific outreach to communities that might not know how to apply, not know to apply, other than just kind of these press conferences?
Yes, I mean we are working through the Regional Development Corporation Network, who, especially on the Central Vermont side, they set up their own disaster center to actually submit applications, to arrange for translations, to help the BIPOC community apply for these grants. That's just one example, but there's also similar folks in Ludlow area, as well as the Hardwick and Caledonia counties.
With that $6 million, how many businesses have got money so far?
The 280 have been approved, and about 169 have been paid out. So there is a queue of people waiting up to be paid, and there's also a queue of people, they're under review.
You started by talking about heating systems. Do you have any information about how the Efficiency Vermont program is going, which is geared specifically towards helping make people whole and also upgrade?
Yeah, we're working with them to make sure that we are sharing this information. That's part of the reason we want to do this survey, so we know what the unmet need is. We have no idea whether there's 50 or 1,000 who need assistance in terms of their heating system. So when we get that information, then we'll be working with all the associations as well as with Efficiency Vermont to be sure that we're getting all the information to these victims, flood victims, to make them whole.
Have you heard anything about the take-up rate for the Efficiency Vermont?
I have not. Have you heard anything?
I actually don't know that it's actually been deployed yet. I still think it's in development. One of the things I have the floor, I did want to mention is the timing of the deployment of additional money from the BGAP is hopefully going to be very helpful with that, because this money can be stacked or braided together with that. So hopefully, landlords or businesses that need to, install new heating systems or move them can use that money to do that work. So.
I don't know who this is for, but you're saying the recipients of this survey are going to be people who have previously reported to FEMA that they have flood-related damage to their heating systems.
Yes.
So if they've done that, then why wouldn't the issue have been resolved by FEMA at this stage?
Well, again, they may have received their assistance, but they have not had their heating systems repaired. And that could be due to supply chain issues or not being able to find the help to do it. And we want to link that together so that that's part of our challenge. It's not just the financial end. It is actually finding the tradespeople to do the work. And if there's a gap somehow, we want to help put that together.
So this is, you're getting the sense, you're worried based on these anecdotes you've been hearing, that
I
we
am.
may be getting to a place where people don't have heat when they need heat, and so this is
Yeah, when you see when you start seeing the temperature drop, and I hear some of the stories and anecdotally, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to meet the need, and that could be in different ways. And it's not, as I said, it may not just be financial. It might be just trying to find someone from out of the area, or if there's so much that the in-state resources can't help, or there's a supply chain issue in-state, that we can use whatever means we can to reach out of state to provide for help.
So the state, you can envision contracting with out-of-state contractors?
Or at least bringing them in, reaching out to bring people in if we need to. We may not, but we just don't know what the spectrum provides.
And if you reach, if a Vermonter responds to this survey and says, yeah, I reported this flood damage, I was denied by FEMA, so I don't have the money to replace it, is the state going to step in?
We will work with them, and again, we would implore that they appeal their FEMA denial, as General Roy had talked about before, and as I advocate for many people. The situation when I was in the store talking with someone who said that they were taking out a loan because they got denied by FEMA. He wasn't complaining. He said, I had to take out a loan for $10,000 and I'm going to need another $2,000. He said, I'm going to have to go back. And he wasn't complaining about that at all. But I said, did you appeal the FEMA denial? And he said, no. He said, I just got the letter, and I said, there's other people who need the help, and I'll just do this on my own. So that's when I talked with our team about this, that I think this is something that FEMA expects. Appeal it if you disagree. Appeal the FEMA response, and that's why we wanted to make sure that we're communicating that.
If someone is paid out, let's just say $5,000 or $6,000, which is well below the cap of $41,000, $42,000, can they? And they've already spent that because they needed to get that money out the door, fix up their boiler. Can they appeal that?
I believe they can, but I'll have.
Yes, sir. And Sam, do you want to jump in at all? So we're blessed to have Sam Harvey with us. He's one of our individual assistance experts, and so. Thanks.
Good morning, I'm Sam Harvey. I work with FEMA on the individual assistance side. So to get to your question, yes, if somebody received, let's say $5,000 from FEMA, specifically for their HVAC, to repair or replace it, and they get an estimate or a quote that says it's going to cost $10,000 to fix it, and they've already put $5,000 towards it, they can still come back to FEMA, file an appeal, say, I received this much, my estimates are for this much, I have a document to show it, and through that appeal process may be awarded the remaining $5,000 to get to that total amount.
But they have to have the documentation for whatever project or repair they're going to do.
Yeah, it would require either a contractor estimate or a contractor quote or invoice, something official that we can verify. We'll call them back and say, is this your quote? And if so, we can move forward with the appeal.
Can you give me a sense of just how many applications you guys have received so far in total, and how much money has gone out since the disaster was declared?
Specific to HVAC or just in total?
Or just individual assistance?
In individual assistance, we're right around I believe it's just over 7,500 applications that have come in. And around $17 to $18 million has gone out to Vermonters for everything from housing repair, personal property replacement, as well as temporary housing rental assistance.
Do you know the average size of the payout?
Obviously, it varies a fair bit, but the average payment is around $6,000 to $7,000.
A lot of consternation about replenishing FEMA's budget. If we find ourselves in a situation where the money is depleted and there hasn't been a replenishment, would FEMA be able to use the immediate needs funding provision in order to continue?
I've got a phone for you.
Would we all be able to invoke that immediate needs funding provision in order to continue giving out assistance here?
So immediate needs funding is already in place right now. And so as we stand right now, funding for public assistance programs is on hold with the exception of some very specific requests. So if I have a project that we really need funding for, that's for permanent repairs, we work one-on-one with FEMA for that. But if it's for emergency protective measures, that's covered.
Related to, same issue, related to SBA and USDA. If we have a government shutdown and on October 1, there's no funding, would that interrupt SBA and USDA's ability to administer their disaster programs in Vermont?
I don't know. I apologize. I don't know that.
One last question for you while you're here. Montpelier City Council gave preliminary approval to let FEMA site 36 trailers on a parcel outside the downtown. Can you talk about what's happened since they gave that go-ahead?
Certainly. Yep. We continue to work with them, looking at the infrastructure, the size of the water main you would need for it, how it would lay out the electrical systems, et cetera. So we have contractors right now working that with the city and the state to do a layout of what that site would look like.
What level of confidence do you have right now that this is going to be a viable project?
I have a strong level of confidence. The only question is the longevity of it. Obviously, there's a desire, if at all possible, for there be permanency to it. Right now, that's not assured for us. We continue to work with the state and the city on potentials for it. If there's another plot we can move it to or adjust, that would be optimum for both the residents as well as for Vermont, for housing overall. So that's the discussion we're looking for. But programmatically, FEMA's mission is to get people who are displaced from their homes into a home as quickly as we can. And so many times we put these in place, they're not permanent locations. They're temporary in nature, and then at the end of 18 months, they're placed somewhere else, or they found something in the intervening period. Ideally, we would like to be a permanent location. That's still under consideration.
And any solutions in the offing for Lemoyle and Windsor counties?
So in our, we continue to look for those individuals, and we have two categories: people who we're looking at for providing direct lease, so find an apartment, put them in that apartment, or a mobile home unit and finding commercial pads. There are a significant number of commercial pads available in Windsor. We're still exploring Lemoyle to see how many may be available for that as an option. The populations for both those counties for direct housing right now are very small. I think 8 and 6, roughly speaking, so not a huge population. Obviously, Washington County is the biggest one.
This will be the last thing for me. I just want to be clear. In your ideal world, you put the 36 FEMA trailers on this lot, and after 24 months, these folks have an opportunity for FEMA to either donate those trailers or for them to buy those trailers, and they can live there indefinitely.
We'll go 18 months because we haven't gotten extended yet, but good point. And certainly that would be ideal for everybody, right? It'd be ideal for FEMA because we wouldn't have to go in and the expenses of picking them up and move them. It would help people who were displaced and now have a permanent place to live. And it would help the housing stock for Vermont. So, yes, sir.
Is 36 trailers expected to take care of the need for direct housing in Washington County?
As we stand right now, it will more than handle the population we have. What we don't know is of the 200 some odd people we've contacted, and a number of them said, no, I'm good. If their status changes over time, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I need help. I thought I was going to be okay. I'm not. And so But we do have a lot of data across the country on what we start with and what we end with. And typically you start with a large population, and by the time everything's set up, it's a smaller population. The good news, I think, for FEMA is that the state has leaned so far forward so quickly that, we're going to have them set up in a relatively short period of time as housing is concerned.
I have a clarifying question about what you asked about earlier. You were asking about, what happens if FEMA runs out of money, but did you answer specifically what happens, if there's a government shutdown? Can you guys, still pick up the phone if someone is applying for individual assistance?
So all the staff that we have here in the field are all paid out of the disaster response relief fund. So whether they're shut down or not, we continue working. And the programs that we have back in headquarters fall under the stipulation that they are critical, and so they continue to work as well.
Okay, so that would slow down someone's individual assistance. Okay, great.
Of the couple hundred that you've contacted, how many have said that they're interested in?
We had a population around 57 to begin with, and I think it's slowly whittling down onesies and twosies.
So it would be 57 different households, or how many of those are the same?
57 applicants.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So can you just talk about the development of that area? And do you guys have a goal in terms of how long it would take?
Well, our goal is to have everybody in place within 90 days of having it started. Now, there are always challenges, right? For infrastructure. Anybody who's ever been involved in building a house, you realize that there are challenges here, but that's our goal. As you see right on the trailer, right, we have the mobile housing units available. We have a number of them right now, a small number positioned, but it's a 2-day move from where they're at to get here. So it's really about laying the infrastructure.
That area is a very flat area. So just what challenges do you guys foresee with development?
Well, we've got some really experienced contractors. In fact, one of the individual, the Secretary of Transportation was talking to him. He's been home 1 year out of the last 7. So they've got a lot of experience doing this, and I'm more than assured that there'll be no challenges. Working with the state and the city to ensure that the appropriately, so it's not subject to precipitation.
You said 90 days from the start. Do you have any idea in terms of talks with the city when that might start?
We're within, I'd say, a couple of weeks of that. Yeah.
General, I wanted to get back to that 6,000, 7,000-ish number from individual assistance. I mean, are you when those checks are going out, are you hearing appeals from people, or are you hearing that number is satisfactory to help people recover?
That's a good question. How many of the 5,775, I think this morning, was the actual number have applied? Now, of that number, I think 120 of them are from residents in counties that are not declared, Addison, et cetera. So the good question is how many of those people who've received initial funding have come back based upon a letter we provided them. I'm not sure. We can certainly get that to you. But when you take a look at the fact that, we've got, our initial estimate was around 6,100 people based upon the population, and the impacts. We're at 5,700 now, so we're getting there. Each day, it's smaller numbers, around 13 or so, I think it was yesterday, for people who have registered. But it's the eligibility letters, right? And I've said many times to you, right? Life changes. You thought you had enough, and all of a sudden something changed. Please continue to call us. Reach out. Go to the disaster recovery centers. That's the perfect place to go to sit down with folks to talk about what's going on to provide you additional assistance.
Did you say 90 days to get those trailers sited and habitable, but after you start construction?
That's our typical goal. Yes, sir.
That would put us into January. What are those folks doing in the interim?
So right now, many of them are with friends and families. So they found something temporarily to stay in until such time as it's set up. But the challenge for us is that every month that goes by, they may find some other permanent solution. Right? An apartment may have them opened up for them. It's like, hey, great, I got another place I can go to.
Got a couple people on the phone. Before I go to them, I think Secretary Curley has a quick update.
I just wanted to clarify
that it looks like Efficiency Vermont does have that program online. I didn't want to spread misinformation. I also want to keep Peter Walker in my good graces, but I want to make sure folks that they are going out there and applying, because that's really important money. Again, it's grant money. So Efficiency Vermont does have that on their website at efficiencyvermont.com. So.
We'll go to Tim McQuiston, Vermont Business Magazine.
Hi, Governor. I just wanted to be clear on the BGAP, how it works. So what you're providing is net of basically less of insurance or less money from Vermont Community Foundation or the Montpelier Recovery Group. That's correct?
Yes, the way it gets calculated is people will put in their total damages, and from that, any money that they expect to receive from insurance, any money from the Community Foundation, or any other charitable organization funds, and we are taking the percentage from the net damage figure.
You know, with the pandemic funding, there's the federal government has tried to claw back some money because of just the financing. I mean, I could see a scenario in which a business could get a lot more money down the line. Would you seek to maybe grab back some of the money because it would go over that percentage you were talking, that net percentage you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we think that we've built in a fair amount of cushion by paying 30%, but we will be monitoring somewhat afterwards to see where people finally ended up. But we anticipate, just from the applications that I've seen, the gaps are tremendous. I mean, there's really hardly anyone who's getting a large insurance payout. I could just say that as a general comment. So I appreciate the question, but I do think that we're allowing for that cushion. And within 6 months or 6 months after, we'll probably do some follow-up.
I see the big license plate behind you. I know that some of the license plate funds were going to come in and support this program. Has there been any money, or do you anticipate very much money from that for the big gap?
I just heard from our finance people that we received $250,000 from it so far.
Well, that's pretty good,
we
right?
at BGAP, yes.
Yeah. And just a quick question on FEMA. The 18 months that General Murray has talked about, the clock doesn't start ticking until someone receives that direct housing benefit, regardless of whether it's the motel or the trailer. Is that correct?
It's 18 months from date of declaration.
So it's 18 months from
July 7th, July 14th.
Okay, so the clock is already ticking.
Yes, sir.
So it only goes until like January or February of 2025 then?
I think January 25, unless as a state requests an extension and it's approved.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Chris Roy, Newport Daily Express. Chris Roy. All right, back to the room.
A really quick question. One thing that's also available if you were flooded is presumably the state motel program. I think you get 84 days if you were affected by a natural disaster. Do we have any information about how many people are availing themselves of that?
I wonder if Commissioner Winters might be on the line, might be able to answer that question.
I am here, Governor. I'm sorry I missed the question. What was the question?
I believe that if you're affected by a natural disaster, you get, I think it's 84 days for the state motel program. Do we know how many people are staying in motels right now through that program because of the flood?
Thank you. That is correct. They do get 84 days under natural disaster. And if you give me a few minutes, I'll get you that number. I don't have that in front of me.
Sure, thanks.
Do we have any update on roads? I know most state roads are back open, but maybe local and rural roads, what state those are in?
I make him give me this information every morning, so he's well versed.
Good morning. As far as state roads, we still have 2 state roads that are fully closed, and those will go toward the end of October before those are open. They're on schedule, they're on track, they're just going to take that time. We have 8 state roads that are partially open, and the longest that I see among those 8 would be around the 10th of November. Those also are tracking on time, they just are going to take that much time. There are no state bridges that are currently closed. As far as local town roads, I don't really have that information, but what I can tell you is that Vermont Emergency Management and the SEOC continues to communicate with Vermont towns. AOT, for example, today is working in 4 Vermont towns with our towns and those towns. We have good rapport with road department every day of the year, and I am not aware of requests of the state of Vermont for assistance for local roads at this point. And obviously, as you've heard, as far as the funding pieces, they may not always come together, but we have rendered what assistance we could throughout this. And if there's clearly any urgent or emergent situations that a town makes us aware of, we would address that, or at least see what we could do to address that. Well, we have been helping with our temporary bridges. I believe right now we have 7 temporary bridges out across the state, and those are mostly all with local towns.
Do you just have any sense of, now that we're 2.5-ish months out from this, what the totality, like what the dollar figure has been, and what that means? Do we have any sense what that dollar figure is?
We continue to compile our numbers. Some of the Agency of Transportation's damages we will be working with FEMA on with respect to the active railroad and with respect to the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail, and hopefully with respect to our central garage facility on Route 302 in Berlin down near the Wayside Diner, because it's publicly owned, so that would be FEMA eligible. As far as the state roads and bridges and culverts and things, those come under the Highway Administration. You may recall a month or so back we had a representative from Federal Highway. So that work continues. We're actually transitioning now to programming a lot of permanent projects that would ping the Federal Highway side, and so I don't have an end number yet. Okay, I can say that we are in the high tens of millions of dollars when it comes to rail damage at this point. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you all very much. Good job.
Just standing here feeling a little guilty about it. This is a line. You know, my spot on you.